was there a number of incidents that the FBI had ignored prior to the attacks of September 11, 2001? We always hear about the CIA and the Israeli Mossad or the Saudi GID, and not much in the way of the FBI. Well, the argument coming from people like Director Mueller or Louis Freeh, the previous director from Mueller, is that the FBI is always left behind when it comes to collecting personal data or pertinent data regarding Al-Qaeda or terrorist cells inside the United States. But I'm going to show in this video that there were many warnings about terrorist cells inside the United States learning to fly aircraft at a number of training facilities inside the United States. There are going to be certain stories that you're not familiar with, and they're just buried in the recesses of time. And these are very important instances because I would show that, at the very least, that the FBI had information which could have been valuable if acted upon regarding a high number of Arabs or terrorist operatives inside the United States learning to fly aircraft. There was an American by the name of Harry Ellen, who was a resident of Phoenix, Arizona. He was a businessman who was a later convert to Islam. His handler is an FBI agent by the name of Ken Williams, who will have a much bigger part to play later on in the video regarding warnings inside the FBI. And so Harry Ellen became an informant for the FBI, and he would go to local mosques and report to Ken Williams about any suspicious or troubling activity relating to terrorist plots or terrorist operations. One day, Harry Ellen actually informed Ken Williams about a student who used to go to the University of Arizona. His name was Hani Hanjour. He would have later ramifications for the obvious reasons. He would be alleged to be part of the 9/11 plot, and he was allegedly the American Airlines Flight 77 pilot, although I have questions about that. According to Harry Ellen, quote, the FBI knew everything about this guy, including his exact address, phone number, and even what car he drove, end quote. Now, the FBI actually would go on to deny this. I don't know why, because Ken Williams is his handler, and Ken Williams actually states to Harry Ellen to drop the issue. That's 1996, by the way. At around the fall of 1996, I'd say October, November, Hani Hanjour actually has an application for CRM Airline Training Center in Scottsdale, Arizona for 3 months. And according to his training, his airline trainer there, he says that he's a very bad pilot. He's very piss poor, actually, as well as being unintelligible. His English was not very good, and so Hani Hanjour was having troubles. But he went to another airline in Arizona, got a commercial airline pilot, even though he barely passed the test. And it comes out later in 1998 that the FAA knew about his poor quality of flying, and doesn't take away his pilot's license. That's 1998. Also about in 1998, the FBI receives reports that a militant Islamic organization might be willing to bring students inside the United States for flight training. This was a May 15th, 1998 memo that was sent in the regional offices of the Southwest, according to the FBI, It warned that Middle Eastern men were training at U.S. flight schools, and the FBI was aware that people connected to this unnamed organization had performed surveillance and security tests at airports inside the United States. The report made comments suggesting an intention to target civilian aviation, and this would fit right well because it was reported that Mohammed Atta, who took part in 9/11 operation by allegedly piloting American Airlines Flight 11 into the North Tower, crashed in the North Tower, where he was dressed as a pilot and dressed as an employee of an airline in Atlanta. He was seen, according to FBI reports that came out after September 11th. I believe there were very few media outlets that reported on this story, but it would show that the FBI was aware that there were Al-Qaeda or terrorist operatives who were surveilling airports well before the 9/11 attacks even happened. But apparently the memo was not shared with other FBI offices or the FAA. At about 1998, again, we go back to this very important year, an American Caucasian Muslim who also lived in Phoenix named Aukie Collins. His first name is Aukai. His last name is Collins, for you to Google or look into his background. He, too, is an FBI informant, and he reports to the FBI Phoenix office about Hani Hanjour, suggesting that he's part of a larger group of Arabs who are trying to learn how to fly aircraft. And so there are a number of reports coming from informants who are inside these mosques, in Phoenix, who are reporting to the FBI field offices about an unusually high number of Arabs trying to fly aircraft. And I'll come back in a bit and talk to you that it's not the only state who was warning about this. In 1999, it'll be learned that an Al-Qaeda operative named Zacarias Moussaoui had studied flight training in Norman, Oklahoma, in 2000, Muhammad Atta and Marwan al-Shehi will briefly visit the same school. But it came out later in 2000, much later, in 2001, that Zacarias Moussaoui actually went to an airline in Minneapolis and asked the trainer there whether he could fly the plane and not worry about landing it. I can't think of the trainer name off the top of my head, but he actually reported Moussaoui's suspicious, troubling behavior to the FBI. And the FBI agent who took control of that operation was Harry Samet, who then arrested Moussaoui and Hussein al-Attas in a hotel room in Minneapolis. In November of 1999, Hamdan al-Shalawi and Mohammed al-Qudahin, I'll spell their names, Hamdan, Hamdan, al-Shalawi, Shalawi, Mohammed, Mohammed, al-Qudahin, Qudhaeein, for those who want to Google and search about these individuals. They're detained for trying to get into the cockpit of an American West airline that was taking out of Phoenix, Arizona to Washington, D.C. They tried to enter the cockpit twice, mistaking it for the bathroom, according to al-Qudahin. And it came out later that both of these men were heading for a Saudi embassy dinner in Washington. And it comes out much later at the 9/11 attacks that these two men were actually paid by the Saudi kingdom to do a dry run for the September 11 attacks. Although Shalawi and Qudahin basically deny this charge. So, into early of April of 2000, we go back to the Arizona FBI agent I mentioned previously before, Ken Williams. And he gets a tip that makes him suspicious that there are a number of Arabs training in flight schools, and that they might be linked to Islamic militant organizations abroad. Williams will now begin an investigation based on that tip, which will lead to an infamous memo that I'll talk about in a bit called the Phoenix Memo. And of course, the Phoenix Memo, which is an FBI document which has information coming from previous informants, one of them being Harry Ellen, about Arab students flying planes. But Williams begins an investigation into an Arizona flight student named Zachariah Subra, and I'll spell his name Zacaria Sobra, Soubra. And Subra will be the main focus of Williams' Phoenix Memo. And on July 10th of 2001, Williams sends his memo, which is entitled Zachariah Mustafa Subra, IT-Other, Islamic Army of the Caucasus. It focuses on Sobra, who's a Lebanese flight student in Phoenix. In Prescott, Arizona, and his connection with the terrorist group in Chechnya, which has ties to Al-Qaeda. And I'm going to assume it's going to be Ibn Khattab, who's a formidable Chechen leader. And he has ties to Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. And incidentally enough, Zacharias Moussaoui actually goes and tries to train with Ibn Khattab, but Khattab finds it to be unuseful and sends him back. The title of the memo, in which there are a couple of quotes in the memo. I'm not going to quote the whole memo to you because a lot of it is redacted, but quote, Osama bin Laden and al-Mujahideen, I'll spell the name of the organization, al-Muhjiroun, al-Mujahideen. I'm probably saying that wrong. Supporters attending civil aviation universities, colleges in Arizona, end quote. Now, Williams states in the memo that he interviewed some of these students, and so did his informants. And their information came back that he heard some of them make hostile comments toward the United States and their foreign policy, mainly toward Israel, which is, of course, one-sided. Additionally, he notes that they were suspiciously well-informed about the outlines of security measures inside certain airlines and airports around the country. And Williams actually warns of a possible effort by Osama bin Laden to send students to the United States to attend civil aviation universities and colleges to learn about how to fly airplanes. But the memo is actually lacking in that what targets are going to be target, or if they're trying to learn planes and hijack and crash them, because at this point there is no intelligence report suggesting that this was a martyrdom operation that they're using. A lot of the FBI higher-ups in Minneapolis and Phoenix and in New York basically ignore these memos and reports because they don't want to inflame tensions between Saudi Arabia and the United States, and that's coming from the very top, Louis Freeh, with the FBI director, and of course with the State Department, who has strong ties with the Saudi kingdom for obvious reasons, and that's through the oil industry. The memo is addressed to a couple of important FBI agents that will have later ramifications. Dave Frasco, chief of the Radical Fundamentalist Unit in Minneapolis, Rod Middleton, who's the acting chief of the Osama bin Laden Unit in Washington, D.C., and Jack Clunan, who is an FBI agent, part of the I-49 unit, who is following Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. However, the memo is marked routine rather than urgent through the Phoenix office, and it's generally ignored for months. It's not shared with any of the FBI officers or agents, and the recommendations in the memo aren't taken because hardly anyone reads the memo. Sounds familiar? That would be the CIA's memo regarding the Wafa Hasmi, Khalid al-Mihdhar, and Alex Station. Actually, one colleague in New York actually replies that the memo is speculative and not very significant, which I find to be quite shocking. There are a number of FBI agents that would come out later and suggest that the FBI, their superiors anyway, had acted with malfeasance. One of them being Robert Wright, who was an FBI agent in New York who led the Vogel betrayal operation or investigation, which was looking into allegations that Saudi businessmen, Yassin al-Qadi, I'll spell his name, Yassin al-Qadi, who helped finance the embassy bombings in 1998 in East Africa. And in late 2002, Wright will claim that he discovered evidence that some of the FBI intelligence agents who stalled and obstructed his investigation were the same agents who misrepresented FISA petitions regarding the Moussaoui case. And going back to the Moussaoui case, Colleen Rowley, who would testify before a House Select Committee about Minneapolis field supervisor Bob Bowman, and Dave Frasca, who I mentioned before, who basically disallowed Harry Samet, who I mentioned before, to open a FISA warrant, which you need in regards to a foreign person, which is Zacarias Moussaoui, about a foreign terrorist operation that he was involved with in Germany and in France, and they needed a FISA warrant to look through his laptop, which was confiscated when they arrested him or detained him at the hotel. But they couldn't get the FISA warrant because, according to Frasca and Bowman, it was not legal to look through his laptop, or they didn't have the justifications for doing so. They did on September 11th after the attacks happened. They got the warrant conveniently. So it's not to say that the FBI had well intentions regarding monitoring terrorist cells inside the United States. There are a number of FBI agents who I can name right off the top of my head: John O'Neill, Jack Clunan, Ali Soufan, Frank Pellegrino, a number of others, Colleen Rowley, Robert Wright, that had good intentions about trying to warn their superiors about terrorist operatives and cells inside the United States who were monitoring airport security, as well as learning to fly at an unusual rate, usual percentages of Arabs trying to obtain a pilot's license. Most of these warnings, as I reiterated in this video, went ignored. Now, the question is whether it was through malfeasance or deliberate. If we're going to say malfeasance, we have evidence of that. Deliberate, that's speculation. But where there's smoke, there's fire. Just be careful in how you conduct your research regarding if we want to imply that certain high-level FBI officers, agents, or directors or managers were complicit in allowing the attacks to happen, because there really is no evidence for that. But they can't say that they didn't have enough actionable intelligence to at least stop part of the 9/11 operation. And this is also, I'm not bringing up the fact of Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi out west, who lived with an FBI informant. It would come out later that the FBI informant told his handler, Stephen Butler, who's an FBI agent out of the San Diego office, that there was nothing unusual about Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. And it would later come out that this informant only told Stephen Butler the first names of these hijackers and not their last names, and that they tried multiple times to get this guy to talk about about Khalid al-Mihdhar Nawaf al-Hazmi, and it came out later that this FBI informant was named Abdusattar Sheikh. And Sheikh actually claimed that he was an employee of San Diego State University, and San Diego State University would come out later after the 9/11 attacks, much later, and said that he was never an employee. So who was this guy, really? And he basically became a close associate of al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi. And so the San Diego FBI office basically didn't reiterate further regarding Sheikh or who these two men were. So we'll leave the video at that in regards to that the FBI really had a number of actionable intelligence at their disposal prior to the September 11th attacks.